Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. This week's Torah portion has the incredible story of Joseph revealing his identity to his brothers and granting them forgiveness for the crimes they had committed against him by selling him into slavery, throwing him into a pit, and all the misery that he had to endure. But there's something remarkable that Joseph says to the brothers. He says to the brothers when he reveals his identity, don't feel bad, don't be distressed over what you've done to me. Because even though you sold me into slavery, God sent me here on a mission to save the land from famine. So it was all for the good. It was all meant to be. And therefore you don't have to feel guilty, you don't have to reproach yourself, and you don't have to be distressed over the things. But the big question is that really a justification? Just because it turned out okay, does that absolve you from what you've done? The brothers committed a terrible crime against Joseph. They tried to kill him. They sold him into slavery. They caused him to suffer in Egypt. Yes, God worked it all out for the best. And yes, there was a master plan from the master of the world, as there always is. But that doesn't absolve the person who had bad intentions. So how does Joseph console the brothers by saying, don't feel bad because it all worked out for the best? And the key to the answer is in the first word of Joseph's addressing them. He says, V'ata, and now don't feel distressed. What he was saying is as follows. When you commit a crime or a sin or an offense towards somebody, there's two aspects. There's what you've done, which is your guilt, your wrongdoing, and then there's the outcome and the negative impact it has on others. So Joseph says to the brothers, regarding your sin, you've already just demonstrated that you stood up to defend Benjamin. You were willing to risk your lives to free Benjamin from slavery. So therefore, you've gone through the test of demonstrating and proving that you're not the same people who sold me into slavery. You've done teshuvah, you've changed, you've evolved. And therefore, you're no longer guilty and culpable for what you've done because God accepts your teshuvah. And as far as the negative impact it had on me, well, it all worked out for the best. You didn't hurt me, you helped me achieve the fulfillment of my dreams. But what's fascinating about Joseph is, and in the story of Joseph is, that he not only forgives them, he tells them you don't have to even ask for forgiveness. You are not even necessary for you to be forgiven, because you've done nothing wrong to me, and you've already done teshuvah. And this is such an inspiring story of how we should be willing to reconcile, to make peace, to unite with our family members. I heard a story just the other week. Many people in Israel and from outside of Israel are coming and making barbecues for the soldiers on the army bases. And these group of people went to an army base and to make a barbecue for the soldiers, and they see one of the chayalim there. And he's recognized him. He says, I know you. I know your older brother. How's he doing? And the fellow says, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I haven't spoken to my brother for a couple of years. We had a falling out, and I don't know how he's doing. And this visitor to the army base who came to make the barbecue said, this is a time of Jewish unity. Everyone is coming together with love and unity. Strangers from all over the world are coming to Israel to help other Jews. And this is your brother, your flesh and blood, and you're not going to talk to him, especially during a time like this? And he said, why don't you make peace with your brother? And he said, well, I don't know if my brother really wants to make peace with me. He says, let me call him. He calls him on FaceTime, and he says, how are you? He says, I haven't spoken to you in a while. How you been? He says, I'm good. He says, why are you calling me suddenly? He said, I'll tell you, I'm here on an army base. And I ran into your brother, and I asked him how you're doing, and he said he doesn't know. He hasn't spoken to you in a few years. But he really loves you, and he wants to be reconnected and reunited with you. He said, this is a time of war. Your brother's on the front lines. God forbid, anything could happen any day. Why don't you make peace? Why don't you give him love and strength so he could fulfill his mission and come back and live as a happily united family? And his brother started to cry, and he said, I'm so glad you called, because I've been feeling terrible, especially since October 7th, that as brothers, we're not talking to each other. I'm worried about him. Please, can I speak to him? And he handed the phone to the soldier on the army base. The two brothers virtually hugged and kissed and reunited. This is the story of Am Yisrael in these days that we find ourselves in. This is the story of the first Jewish family, Joseph and the brothers. If there's ever a time to make peace, to unify with one another, to make sure that brothers and sisters as a Jewish people, especially brothers and sisters who are flesh, who are physically brothers and sisters, not just spiritually and emotionally, this is the time to reunite. And in the merit of our unity, as we say in the Amidah,